Hi there, it's MA. Welcome or welcome back. I'm going to do a VR to Logan's tag Forever Decks. I was just watching Kay over at Amidst the Gray. I was just watching the VR they did, and it was mentioned that there was some, they were in a certain kind of feely mode. And I think that's where I am today. The new moon is in Pisces, and there's some stuff going on that may come out in this conversation. And as I was starting to ask myself the question about Forever decks and pull the decks off the shelf, yeah, it was surprising. I had some surprising results here. So let's just get into it and see what happens. So I think my conclusion overall, so the first deck I'm going to take out is my first deck, my just Rider-Waite-Smith, US Games, whatever, from maybe about 8 years ago that I've trimmed. It's grimy and borderless and titleless and sloppily edged, and I love it dearly. And honestly, I went through most of the decks and I was really thinking any of you would do. Really, when it came to the tarots, I didn't pull that many decks, and I think what I concluded is, for me, the way tarot has worked for me over the last, I want to say about 3 years, is the tarot decks have been a little bit of a mirror and, reflective, and maybe the tarot is me talking to myself and saying, hey, you need therapy, or you need to go talk to a friend about this. And I don't mean that in a glib way. I am someone who has spent time in therapy, and now, I work through a lot of things independently. And if I come up against snags again, I will, go see a professional again. That's something that comes and goes in my life, and it's all good. But I found that the tarot decks, that's how they function, is me in conversation with myself. And it was really a few of the oracle decks that it turned out were, or the oracle decks, or maybe some crossover tarot oracle card decks that are a little more flexible and in between genres, that were more of an outside voice, more of a teacher, more of a guide coming in. And I just thought that was really interesting. So I've been through my whole deck collection. I've been through my culling video. I don't have plans to get rid of anything I have. I love all my decks. But really, when I was like, which tarot deck, even this one, like this specific deck, if I ever met anyone that I felt like this deck was calling to be with them, I would just hand it over. And I feel that way about most of my tarot decks, because I could walk into a shop tomorrow and pick up this almost exact same deck and cut it to bits again and read with it. So that was an interesting revelation for me. But this one does have sentimental value. Of course, it's my first deck, and I've handled it a lot, and I've modified it, and I've gone through extended periods where it's the only deck that I really wanted to work with. I learned from it. So yeah, I don't have any plans to get rid of it, and I do love it to bits. So here's one that I really do feel, I've showed this one before. This is the Shadowlands Tarot. And I have been using this more because I've been doing the 365 Yellow Bricks Wizard of Oz reading and journaling prompts. And this is the deck that I've chosen to work with. And this one would be harder to replace, because the more I work with it, this is not real. I'm not going to call it an inner child deck, because that, I don't know. I think that term is too easy. But I will just say, I'm 61 years old. I grew up at a time when the TV was on, the Addams Family was there, the Munsters were there, Bewitched was there, Dark Shadows was on in the afternoon, although I was not allowed to watch it. And I was so attracted. I would have moved in with the Addams Family, the Munsters. I mean, that was my kind of alternative world, and almost like, yeah, I think those people would get me. And I don't know if that I was that weird of a kid, but I did have a, you know, a medical trauma when I was in first grade, where I had an anaphylaxis drug reaction and lost consciousness. I was in the hospital for several days. So I don't know, you know, to me, the fact that I blacked out and lost consciousness, you know, I don't want to refer to it as near death, but I think it's as near death as you want to be as a 6-year-old. So I think my worldview was a little skewed as a young child. And when I work with this deck, I really feel like I could step into any of these cards and hang out with these beings. I feel like I know them from an earlier part of my life. And I think out of all the tarot decks, this was the one that I really got emotional about. And I am again. So yeah, this one is not going anywhere. Although this particular deck, if I felt like it needed to go into someone's hands, I would hand it over and buy myself a new copy. But that's what I've got going on with that deck. It goes to a deep and friendly, and I feel a lot of love when I read with those creepy people. Salsa Burrito is kind of on the verge for me. Yeah, I would not want to be without this deck. I don't see getting rid of this deck again if someone wanted it. I'm not really attached to my own current physical copies of any of these. But as I've been working, you know, as I just mentioned, I had a trauma as a young child. And as I've been working with tarot, you know, I've been kind of working through some of the disassociation that's been part of my life as a result of that unresolved, undiscussed, unaddressed medical trauma as a child. And I feel like this deck almost works as flashcards of, you know, emotional expression for me. And I wouldn't want to be without it. Yeah, I love reading with it. It challenges me a little, because when I just get like a face or, you know, like a close-up thing like that, I have to work a little to open myself up to feel the cards instead of knowing the meaning and interpreting a scene. So I would definitely not want to be with that deck. I never see myself saying, yeah, I've had enough of that, and giving it away. So the next one, this is one that bridges that like tarot / oracle. I mostly use it as an oracle. As soon as I got this deck, it just felt really special. I've said this before. I just, you know, I wrapped it and had it on my altar for a while. It just is like not a life coach or a teacher, but someone who says the thing you need to hear. And you already know it, but you don't want to hear it, kind of thing. Even if it's a positive thing, sometimes, you know, like, I'm not going to say you, but I'll just speak for myself. Sometimes I want to whine. Sometimes I want to wallow and say I'm misery. And then, you know, to have someone say, hey, you carry the seed, you know, that's a loving message. But it's also maybe, you know, I might resist that and say, yeah, but I want to be miserable today, you know? So this is how that deck functions for me. And it's something that I probably just, you know, pull one card when I feel like I need that voice, or, you know, if I just want to do a check-in. And I will pull it alongside a tarot reading once in a while, but usually as a supplement, not really to speak to the reading. I don't know. But yeah, this one is a forever deck for me. The Outgrow Yourself, Tarot and Oracle. And I dig it. What's next on my list? This is similar. So this is like another super surprise. And this is why it's on the list as a forever deck. Because, I mean, this deck is adorable. It came in a Witch's Roots box. I told you the story if you've seen the videos. It was in a witch's root box, with the theme, you know, the Fae, and I was like, I'm not into that. And I did not even open the deck. And then I saw someone do a walkthrough, and I had to stop and check in with myself and say, you're being an ass. Like, this deck is exactly what you need. And I think that the fact that this deck brought that lesson to me, or reinforced that lesson of being more like the fool, and embracing that, and embracing the not knowing, and even not knowing myself, and stopping narratives that I've been telling myself to protect myself, and softening. That's why this deck will stay with me. Yeah, because that's what I associate with. And it also, it's a great little deck, and I really enjoy the deck. I think we're seeing a theme here. It's like emotional health situations. And the next one is not completely different. So this is the Uncertain Oracle by Cedar McLeod, who also made the Numinous Tarot. I was watching Cedar do these on their Instagram, just do these like large sheet watercolors over, it was one of those like art challenges, like whatever, 100 paintings in 100 days, and admiring them just for the way they were using paint. And then after that project was over, they took those paintings and kind of, you know, zeroed them in and made them into these single word oracle deck with the round cards, the rainbow back. And again, this is a deck that I've been working with for emotional intelligence, and I think I've gone through most of it, where I would just pull a card, like this one is called Infuse, Release, and I would just sit with it, and then I would write, not about the meaning of the card, I don't know, just about the feeling of the card. And the fact that these were so abstract, you know, the renditions were so abstract, and yet paired with the words, I don't know, I just love it. And I love it as a tactile object, the texture of the cards. I did got one of the editions where Cedar painted the wooden boxes, and yeah, I can't imagine, I don't use it that much anymore, once I cycled through writing about all the cards, but yeah, I wouldn't want to be without it. It's just a beautiful thing. And then the next one that has come into my heart so deeply and swiftly is newish, and I haven't even worked through all the cards yet, but it's the Kanji Oracle, which I'm doing the 1 week at a time study. I'm a couple of days, I think I switch out cards on Wednesdays or Thursdays usually. So this is the card for, we're in week 9 since the winter solstice. I don't know if this is going to show up for the glare. This week it's the card is the Voice of the Moon, and I am working with the book, so I'm pulling the card. I will write about the card before I read the book and just reflect on the image. And I'm working on, I will write down how it makes me feel. I will write, you know, just things about the card. And then I'm working through the book. I'm working through some of the prompts in the book. I don't get through all the prompts every week, because the prompts include creative prompts, journaling prompts, ecological prompts, and 1 card a week is even a little too much for me to keep up with. But it's really important for me. And, you know, at this point I can see, once I get to the end of the 52 weeks, just continuing the cycle forever. I'm just completely in love with it. The book is so well written, and the cards are just so strange and so evocative. I don't want to be without it. I would not even file this with decks. You know, I have a section in my bookcase that's like the spiritual books, and that's where I put it. I mean, it's really doing it for me. Let's put it that way. And then I have one last deck on my list, which is one, when I did my like only 10 decks something mashup, I did not end up picking this one. But I do not want to be without this deck, because we've been through a lot together. And that is, I can't get it out of the bag, it's a tight fit, and that is the Dark Goddess Tarot. This has been like a slow you know, I bought this deck maybe almost 3 years ago. It's been kind of a slow groove with us. I don't use it as a tarot. I use the cards for guidance. I use the cards for prompts. I sometimes will pick out specific cards seasonally. Like I had the kayak card out for a while. And I don't really know what to say. I think when I got it, I didn't even really understand what is a dark goddess. But there's been some times over the last few years where there's been a descent that I needed a guide through, or I needed a guide back out of. And there still is some of that descent going on that I'm navigating. And I don't want to be like a vague person, but I'll just say, you know, I have my mother is my remaining parent. Her dementia is worsening quickly, and it's really manifesting with speech and language and memory and capability. And yeah, it's just really, really rough. And as I'm trying to stay present and available and yeah, the guidance from this deck, in intermittent ways, has been extremely helpful. Carried When I had out, you know, for creative practice, I had Carried When out for a while, and I'm kind of rambling because I was getting a little misty. And I am not someone who works with quote unquote deity. It's a weird thing. So I think that's why this deck is also a surprise, because when I got it, I was like, oh, I like the pictures, and I want to read the stories of these, whatever beings, or the mythologies. And it really did work out to be a much more emotional relationship than that. Again, more like, not as a mirror. This is, a deck that I have to collaborate with. And that for me is why I ended up with more oracles than tarot, which was a shocker for me. But when I really thought about what I needed from my decks, I found the tarot decks way more interchangeable than what I was getting from some of the oracles. Yeah, so that's that. Thank you for sticking through this, if you did. And yeah, thanks. Talk to you later. Bye.